Say what you need to say. 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 Say what you need to say.
Here's Graceland with Jennifer Meadows.
We've lost a major battle for Western civilization, Savage says. Millions of immigrants from the Middle East flood countries like Germany, France, and Britain. And the likes of Angela Merkel and Barack Obama are actually invading their own country, wiping away the predominant culture, language, and customs. And I would certainly agree with Michael Savage, but I'm not quite ready to just surrender just yet. And I agree it's possibly a battle lost in a larger war for the West. That I will certainly agree with. But you know what? My big question is why? Why would a leader like Barack Obama want to invade his own country with third world immigrants? And I think it's because they know that Americans like you and I have finally caught on to the games. Americans are awake and they want the nation they once had to be restored. And the very simple answer to this question of why, it's all about control. And they want to control you, but they don't want you to be in control of your own government. Now, I am Jennifer Meadows, and you are listening to Graceland on Philadelphia's 1360 AM, along with principal political analyst for the Independent Voter Network, TJ O'Hara. And our guest on the show today is a news editor for WorldNet Daily. His name is Leo Hohmann, and we're going to be talking about this what I talked about right there in the opening, the refugee resettlement programs and this invasion of America and what communities are doing to fight back. And then at the bottom of the hour, we're going to have media personality Charles Albert Johnson III will join us as he usually does. And TJ, it's interesting. We're talking about Michael Savage here in the opening there. He's throwing in the towel on immigration. He thinks it's a battle lost. I think it certainly does look a bit bleak here. But the average American, there's nothing to. How do we fight back against this? We can't make these decisions about immigration. So we're seeing these immigrants from all these countries whose culture is so counter to ours. Moving in possibly next door. I mean, what do you do?
Well, I agree with you on one point and disagree with you on another. I think where we agree is that Michael Savage may be overreacting a little bit. Of course, he likes to be out there on
TJ.
Yeah, he tends to be out on the fringe because it sells books, and it sells advertising. So I understand that part of it. So I don't think it's time to throw in the towel. Where I would disagree is that we can't make a difference. We have an opportunity to make a difference every 2 years. The question is whether people are willing to invest the effort to become informed citizens and then cast an informed vote rather than kind of defaulting to one of the two party lines. Why don't we start trying to attract better people to office and people who will take a more rational approach to these types of problems rather than an ideological one? And I think that's where we're running into the problem. We've got an administration that has an ideological approach, so they're pre-committed, regardless of whatever the facts would suggest, to bringing more people in and creating more of a multicultural approach. So this isn't a theory. This isn't a white paper that's being submitted for a grade at an Ivy League school. We're dealing with the actual culture of the United States, and I think it's about time we start putting people in office who respect that.
Well, and character counts. It does count. I know we've lost sight of that when we've had these hearings with Benghazi and Hillary Clinton, and it's so transparent that she's lying to us about what's really happening. And I agree with you that we got to quit voting on parties and start voting for people with character that are wanting, like you said, to make a difference. And with that, TJ, I believe our guest is with us, and Leo Homan is a news editor with WorldNet Daily. And Leo, thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me on, Jennifer. Happy to be here.
Yes, and we're going to be talking about a bit of what we discussed there in our opening about immigrants. And so Leo is actually a news editor for WorldNet Daily. He has been a reporter and editor at several newspapers in Atlanta and in the Charlotte, North Carolina areas. And today we're going to be talking about refugees coming in from places like Syria to the U.S. And I know you wrote an article about this topic last week, Leo. So tell us about the situation.
Yeah, basically we're dealing with a situation where Congress has been debating for several months now whether or not they like the idea of bringing in Syrian refugees. And it's pretty much divided along party lines. You had 14 Democratic senators write a letter to President Obama back in May telling him that he was not bringing in enough Syrian refugees. We needed to bring in upwards of 65,000 by the time he leaves office, and he had only agreed at that time to about 8,000. He's upped that now to about 11 or 12,000, but that's still not enough for some of these Democrat senators. Then on the other side of the coin, you've got people like Congressman Michael McCall, Brian Babin in the House. Nobody's making a stink in the Senate, Democrat or Republican. But in the House, you do have a small contingent of Republican House members who are saying we should not be bringing in any of these Syrian refugees because they're just too difficult to vet. And taking the side of those conservative Republicans, and trust me, there's not many. There's maybe a couple of dozen at most, even in the Republican Party in the House.
No, I will agree with you. All these folks that call themselves conservatives, they're not really conservatives. So.
Right. There's 25 or 30 max who really care about this issue, and this is far more important, by the way, than Hillary's emails, for reasons that you touched on in your opening discussion there with DJ about what's going on in Europe. This has the potential to change civilization. This is a historic shift in population, Islamic population, out of the Middle East into Europe, into the United States, out of Africa into Europe and into the United States, of people who are Muslim and do not share our affinity for basic human rights, the Bill of Rights, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. These are all foreign concepts to these people, but the Democrats want more. Most of the Republicans want more. But on the side of those few Republicans, surprisingly, we do have the FBI. James Comey, the director of the FBI, just last week testified before the House Homeland Security Committee and said that we cannot screen these people that you're wanting us to bring in from Syria. We don't have data points on them. Syria is a failed state. We don't have reliable law enforcement data, intelligence data, all the things that we would look at to sort of cross-examine each refugee applicant as to whether or not they're safe to bring in. We just don't have those data points. And this is not the first time that the administration and the Congress has been told this. Back in February 11th of this year, another FBI counterterrorism official at that point testified saying essentially the same thing. So, but the administration is not to be detoured by the facts. John Kerry, the State Department, will put forth a talking point that will say these are the most scrutinized people of all who come into the United States, refugees. And if you believe that, I've got some land for you.
Well,
down in
Leo,
the southern states,
that touches upon
south of
something
where I live.
Leo, that touches upon something Jennifer and I were talking about close to the opening, and that's the divergence between factual information, which I think James Comey offered, versus ideological, which I think John Kerry offered. Where do you see that coming out? How are the ideological differences or proclivities able to survive in the fact of relatively overwhelming factual evidence?
Well, I think that one of the things that they use against us is this two-party system that we have in this country, which in my view is really just a one-party state. Republicans and Democrats are just different sides of the same coin. They both support this program for different reasons, perhaps, but they both support it. The Democrats are eager to fundamentally transform our country. The Democrat Party ideologically has moved so far left over the years. I've even read some people saying that, Bernie Sanders is to the right of your typical Democrat now, and he's an avowed socialist.
God. That's bad.
Yeah. So you've got the Democrats on one side with their ideological, emotional-based arguments for the refugees. During these hearings that I was talking about, the Democrats on the Homeland Security Committee have put forth no questions. They usually when they do speak, it's something about that the photograph of that dead boy who washed up on the beach. It just tugged at my heart, and it reminded me of my grandson. And we need to do something to help these people. It's America's duty. Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your meek, your all that sort of thing. They were not concerned about facts, as you said. And
that is exactly what Democrats do. They get caught up in emotion, and the facts just go right out the window.
I don't think they believe that. I think that's just a ploy that they use. They know darn well what they're doing. They want to radically transform this country. But they know that the way to play with the American people's minds is to pull at their heartstrings, and they're very, very good at that.
And I do think that the American people are still somewhat naive. And we do need to cut away here for break. But when we come back, I do want to ask you, why is it that most of these immigrants are Muslim? There's plenty of Christian refugees in this area, and, they've been persecuted. It just makes sense. Why aren't we bringing in more Christian or even maybe other religious sects into the country? Why 97% Muslim? It's very, very curious. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. We're talking to Leo Hohmann, who is an editor for WorldNet Daily. We're talking about the refugees in America. They're not being properly vetted, and you know what? They could be moving into your neighborhood. So we'll be back as we continue this discussion in a moment.
Hi, this is Ronnie Wood of the Stones for Rad. You know it's okay to rock and roll and party, because I do it all the time. Just let someone else do the driving. That's what I do. Remember, rock lives, and you should too. Please don't drink and drive.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
So, I'm a dog, and I just got adopted by this new human guy, and I'm starting to wonder how he got along without me. I mean, okay, something as simple as walking around the block. He's got this leash thing, and he puts me on one end and him on the other, and I'm just taking him around. I think he's afraid of getting lost. Without that leash and me guiding him along, I don't think he'd find his way back home. But it's kind of cute.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
Hey, Billy.
Yeah?
Do you want to go to the state fair?
Yeah.
Do you want to ride the roller coaster?
Yeah.
The big one?
Yeah.
The one with the reverse flip?
Yeah!
Well, you can't.
Huh?
Well, you see, Billy, when you throw away money on wasted electricity, you throw away everything you could have done with it, including going to the state fair.
Oh, man.
Cheer up. This year, your parents will make it right. They're going to visit EnergySavers.gov, where they'll get tips on how to save energy and money. Then they'll add extra insulation and get a few of those Energy Star appliances. They could save hundreds of dollars a year. And you know what, Billy?
What?
They'll take you to the state fair next year.
But I want to go this year.
I know you do, Billy. I know you do. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Live from Mississippi, here's Graceland with Jennifer Meadows.
Well, thank you for listening to the program. This is Graceland on 1360 AM. I am Jennifer Meadows with Principal Political Analyst for the Independent Voter Network, TJ O'Hara. And we've been talking about immigration in America with Leo Hohmann, who is a news editor for WorldNet Daily. And right before the break, Leo, I just asked you to explain, has anybody asked this question of why we're bringing in so many Muslim refugees? Why not Christians or even some of the other religious folks that are in this area? How come 97% Muslim? Kind of extreme.
Very extreme. One of the issues going on there, and I just reported this today in a new article, is, well, you've got a couple of issues. First of all, the Obama administration is very hostile towards Christians trying to enter this, persecuted Christians trying to enter this country. You may recall a few months back, the administration even tried to block a Catholic nun from coming to testify before Congress.
Wait a minute. Wait, Leo, I got to stop you there. Okay, wait a minute. We're bringing in possible ISIS members from Syria, but we're blocking Catholic nuns. I just wanted to call attention for that. just
yeah,
briefly.
This nun was
Catholic
coming
nuns, so she's probably a danger to people, I'm thinking.
Yeah, right.
Only if she has a ruler in her hand. We've all been through that.
Right.
Maybe,
she was dangerous because of the information she was bringing and she wanted to share with Congress. So, you know, that was very dangerous. They didn't want that, but when a lot of media outlets reported on it, they backed off, they got embarrassed, and they let her in. Okay, and another interesting story that we broke a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago maybe, that you may or may not recall. There were 27 Chaldean Christians who came in through the southern border. These are Iraqi Christians, ancient Christian community there that, as you know, has just been practically obliterated by ISIS. And here we had 27 of them who came in through the southern border. They had family in San Diego. And
hey, that's TJ's area. TJ is.
They were seeking asylum, like so many others. Remember all those Central American children last summer and more this summer who came in? We couldn't wait to open our arms because they were, you know, poor, oppressed asylum seekers. Mm-hmm. Well, here we had 27 Christians running from ISIS seeking asylum, and President Obama's deporting them.
Oh, my goodness. Now, so they came in through Mexico. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, and we're deporting those, but we're letting criminals out of jails like nobody's business.
Exactly, and we're
Not
also we also have had Somalis, Pakistanis, people from terrorist countries come in through that border, and they get processed and released and given a court date for their asylum hearing. These
Incredible.
folks were, these Christians were held for 6 months in detainment, and now they're being deported. And 5 of them are being charged criminally for falsifying their asylum application. So this is the way we treat Christians who are seeking asylum as opposed to Muslims. Okay, so you've got that being one factor. But then the other factor is very few Christians even want to go to these UN refugee camps. Why? Because they're run by the UN, who is putting in charge a lot of Muslims to manage the camps, and these Christians are being treated so awfully. In many cases, they're being killed in the camps. We had this story just come out today. They're being raped, killed in the camps. So word eventually spreads, don't go to the camps if you're a Christian.
Right.
So,
Leo, I want to jump in for a second. You had mentioned also, you just mentioned Somalis coming up through the southern border into the San Diego area. Are you familiar with what was transpiring up in Minnesota with their governor, Governor Dayton, where he's saying that Minnesota's economy cannot expand based on white B-plus native-born citizens because we don't have enough? And his reaction to anybody who was questioning the infusion of Somalis was, and I think I'll quote him properly, if you're that intolerant or if you're that much of a racist or bigot, then find another state. Are you seeing this type of an attitude from a governmental standpoint with the influx of immigrants?
Oh, absolutely. Depends on the state in this regard. As you know, states like Minnesota that are run by people like Governor Dayton, or New York, run by Governor Cuomo, have exactly that type of attitude. I think Cuomo said last year something similar to what Dayton said this year. If you're not pro-abortion, pro-immigration, pro-mass immigration, and anti-gun rights, and you're not for, or if you're for traditional marriage, you don't have a place in New York State. That's what he said. So, yes, this is still rather shocking and not that common, but we're seeing more of it pop up. And this is exactly the same type of thing that Germans are being told, by the way, in Europe. If they don't like the sight of 4,000 migrants coming into their town of 500 or 600 people and overrunning things and pillaging and leaving a mess and trashing the place and committing crimes, then they're racists or bigots, and they should probably look for another country to live in.
Well, and I was going to ask you, too, I know there's a lot of pushback all across America, and I know that the last time we had you on the show, Leo, we talked about these seed communities that are sprouting up all over America. Some of them are in Idaho, some of them are in South Carolina, but they're sprouting up everywhere. So they're in the southeast, they're in the northwest, they're everywhere at this point. And so, tell us, number one, what communities are doing to fight back, and you might want to mention some of the areas. What are some of these states and communities that are being inundated with these kinds of refugees?
Right. When I started reporting on this topic about 15 months ago, nobody had hardly heard of the refugee resettlement. The good news is, there is some good news, Michael Savage.
Yeah, good.
That, it's still fairly under the radar, but not nearly as much as it was. And we're seeing communities starting in select places to educate themselves first. I know activists who've never heard of this program 2 or 3 months ago, and now they've really educated themselves, and then they're educating their local county commissioners or city council members, and trying to get them on board. It's a slow process, but in South Carolina, I'll tell you, they're on fire there. They have got 2 or 3 counties that are two have already passed a resolution, a third is considering it, and others are considering it, where they are saying no refugee funding. You can't say no refugees. There's really no legal avenue to say that. But in South Carolina, unlike most states, they do have a law where local governments can cut off funding for the refugees. So it's unlikely the feds would send refugees to your community if they can't bring in all the federal funding that goes along with it. So South Carolina's on fire. Idaho, Twin Falls, Idaho is on fire. They have been going literally door to door. Yeah. Oh, and by the way, most of these communities encounter very unfriendly local press when they start questioning this program.
Oh, sure, yes.
The local paper won't let them print their letters to the editor. If they do, they're highly edited. In South Carolina, Greenville, I believe it was, an activist told me that the local newspaper wanted to cut out half of her letter, and it included the part that was statistics on refugees, total factual information.
Oh, okay. So, it wasn't commentary or opinion. It was actual facts. They didn't want it in the paper.
It was right, exactly.
We don't want facts in the news anymore.
No. That's not allowed. So in Idaho, they're actually bypassing the media and going door to door with literature and facts and educating people. And they've been holding rallies. They had a big rally a couple of weekends ago. More than 100 people marching, and through Twin Falls. There's been a big petition drive in Fargo, North Dakota. People are getting active in Macomb County, Michigan. It's really starting to catch on in some places. It's not exactly a wellspring, but it's far more than we saw even a year ago.
Leo, when you bring up facts, makes me think of the Department of Commerce at the end of 2014 said we had roughly a little over 110 million people on welfare. We had about 42 million on food stamps and about another 10 million plus on unemployment insurance. And we currently are running about 15% of literacy in this country. What's the possibility that we might address some of those problems and fix those before we add to them?
Yeah, that's a good point there, TJ, and it also brings me back to some of the ridiculous comments that Governor Dayton made in Minnesota, talking about how these unskilled immigrants from Somalia were somehow propelling his economy forward, and without them, my goodness, without them, I think 85% of Minnesota is white, native-born American, but that's not enough to propel their economy. They need these low-skilled, non-English-speaking Somalis to come in. He obviously doesn't know the facts, or he's covering them up, because it is a fact that 73% of all refugees are on food stamps. And if you take the refugees that come from the Middle East, it's even higher. It's 91%. Don't those sound like highly productive immigrants to you? If you listen to him...
And Leo, you're exactly right. So many of these refugees that are coming in, not just from the Middle East, but coming in from Mexico as well, we keep hearing how they're going to be so productive in society, and this is going to help with labor and all this kind of stuff. But what we're finding is that they're doing nothing but sitting out here on welfare programs and sucking up tax dollars. And, that's great for the economy, Leo. Right. And with that,
exactly.
I wish we could continue this discussion a little bit longer, but I believe we're just about out of time, Leo. So I want you to tell people where they can find you, and we'd love to have you come back.
Sure. I think I could talk about this subject for another hour, Jennifer, at least. But,
exactly.
Just go to WND.com, and or you can Google my name, Leo Hohmann, and you search Leo Hohmann author page on WND, and all of my stories will come up, and you can subscribe to my RSS feed and get my stories that way.
Well, and we appreciate you so much, Leo, for getting the word out on this, because you really have been out on the front lines with the refugee, especially this refugee seed programs that are out all over the United States. So we appreciate the hard work you're doing. And Leo, please come back anytime. And with that, we do need to cut away to break, but you are listening to Graceland on WNJC 1360. We will be back with Charles Albert Johnson III after this brief message.
It's Thursday night, and you're grabbing drinks with some friends. Started off with a pitcher for the table, which quickly becomes two. There's pool. And there's the photo booth.
All right, everybody squeeze in. Say cheese!
Followed naturally by an order of wings. And another.
Can we get some extra ranch sauce?
Then there's the ceremonial nightcap.
So what are we doing this weekend?
And lastly, it's back to the car, which, if you're buzzed, could be the most expensive night of your life. Getting pulled over for buzzed driving could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. Nothing kills a buzz like getting pulled over for buzzed driving, because buzzed driving is drunk driving. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
I started going cold turkey. Well, at least when I'm in the car.
I know I shouldn't do it, but it's so hard to stop. That's why I hide it from myself, so I won't be tempted.
I used to do it all the time. I stopped by locking it in my glove compartment.
My friend used to do it way too much. Now I turn it off when we're in the car.
My solution is simple. I just don't do it.
There are lots of ways to stop yourself and others from texting and driving. How will you stop? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
So if the ties are bound, they do come loose. Tie 'em in a knot like a hangman's noose. 'Cause I'll go to heaven or I'll go to hell before I'll see.
Welcome back to Graceland with Jennifer Meadows.
Well, I am Jennifer Meadows on Philadelphia's 1360 AM with TJ O'Hara and Charles Albert Johnson III. And I did want to talk about, and I know we did talk about this a little bit last week, but about Paul Ryan and the House speakership. And it looks like he will be the new speaker. Many people are not real happy. I'm one of those people, actually. We're trading John Boehner for a Paul Ryan. Doesn't look real good for conservatives. And Congress people, you know, they go out, they form caucuses. And I had never heard of this Freedom Caucus until just recently. But the Freedom Caucus, which was 36 members of the House, basically came in. They didn't give him an official endorsement, but they did say they were going to stand behind him. So it looks like this is pretty much a done deal. But I'm going to ask you, TJ, and you, Charles, do you expect any changes, any real change, I guess I should say, with Ryan as Speaker? And I'm going to start with you, Charles, and then you, TJ.
Well, Jennifer, I was disappointed to hear about the Freedom Caucus's decision. Felt kind of like a betrayal in a sense, because they're supposed to be a voice for conservatism. Paul Ryan, of course, fiscally, he was touted as a conservative. That's debatable, the way things have panned out. If I recall correctly, we all thought he was a good VP pick for Mitt Romney. Our opinion of him has soured since then. He has not come to bat as he should have for conservative causes. That leads me to believe that there will not be much change from John Boehner with a Paul Ryan as Speaker of the House. I think that is going to be more of the same, really. It's going to be the same battles that the conservative wing of the party had to fight against John Boehner. I just don't think Paul Ryan's one of us, in my opinion. And I think it's going to lead to more infighting among the party. That's my opinion.
Now, I agree with you, Charles. You know, he got an F rating by the Conservative Union. It's hard. I'm imagining it's probably pretty hard to do, especially with this bunch that we got in there right now. But he's pro-amnesty. I know he's also for the TPP. He's even been involved in targeting of some other conservatives in the House as well. But TJ, I don't know. What do you think? Any real change if Ryan becomes Speaker?
Well, I think it's human nature to give people a chance. And I think that's what you'll probably see. I think just because of that behavioral trait, there may be an opportunity to make some needed progress, much needed progress. I think if battle lines were drawn and people really dug their heels in and either had an ultra-conservative speaker, I think they'd have a hard time, first of all, having enough votes to pull that off. But on the other side, if they got somebody who was just going to be Boehner 2, if you will, kind of the second version or a second coming of him, I think that would fail too. And I think Paul Ryan's smart enough to understand that. So I think there's going to be a honeymoon period of time where maybe the conservatives cut Paul Ryan a little more slack than they would have had Boehner continued in the speaker position. And in the same regard, I think he's the type of individual who wants things to go well. So I think there'll be some compromise that maybe Boehner either didn't choose to exercise or maybe felt he wasn't in a position to exercise.
Well, and I wish I felt as positive about it, because I do feel like, he's kind of just like John Boehner. It's like, gosh, we've gone through this whole shuffling of the deck chairs and we came up with the same guy, is what I'm feeling. But, and moving into my next question, and this is what everyone's been so upset about is Ryan is pro, amnesty. He's all about this immigration reform. So does this set into motion, basically legalizing, and I am so sick and tired of seeing this written over and over and over again. We don't have 11 million illegals in this country anymore. It's more upward of 50 million. So, hey, newsflash to all of you out there in the writing world. I don't care where you are. Stop printing this whole 11 million. That was back in 2010. Okay. So we're talking about 40, 50, 60 million illegal immigrants in this country at this point. But does this set into motion legalizing these illegals? And I'm going to ask you, TJ.
Well, I think it depends on whom you talk to within, like, the Freedom Caucus, because there's a split within the members of that caucus. There were 5 members of it who wrote a letter to Rand Paul saying that they needed to expand legal immigration. You have Daniel Webster, who's running still for Speaker. He'll be one of the opponents that Paul Ryan has, who also favored some sort of reform. I think his quote was, "Doing nothing is amnesty." And so there's a little bit of a split. Even Jim Jordan, who I think showed tenacity in the recent hearings with Hillary Clinton, and actually brought out probably the most interesting elements, factual elements of that. But even he's talked about needing some sort of reform. So I don't think it's a matter that they're completely against it. I think members of the Freedom Caucus, some members recognize that there's a need to address it. But on the conciliatory side, as I was mentioning before, this is one of the areas that Paul Ryan's already stepped up on, and he said as long as the Obama administration is still in control of the White House, he's not going to push for any type of reform, because I don't think he could get the type of reform that he wants through.
And I certainly hope not. I hope not. I hope we can at least trust Paul Ryan on that one point, if nothing else. But I don't know. What do you think, Charles? I mean, does this set into motion some type of legalizing, some however many million, I don't know, 40, 50 million, 60 million illegals, essentially amnesty?
Well, and Jennifer, to your point about that 11 million number, when they tried to do amnesty when Bush 43 was in the White House, they were saying 11 million back then. So, I mean, surely it's matriculated up from 11 million.
I know. Why?
Since that time, my goodness, this 11 million number is very annoying to me every time I hear it.
It makes me
every
angry.
time I read it, I just get real irked. But to the point of your question, I do believe that this coronation, if you will, of Paul Ryan, I think it is setting the stage for another amnesty push. But look, we've seen this show before. When Bush 43 was in the White House. We've seen it throughout the Obama administration. They're going to push for this. They believe in it. The Democrats want to capture the Hispanic vote as they have the black vote. They want another minority voting bloc going almost unilaterally toward the Democratic Party. The Republicans are afraid of this. So they want to counter, saying, look, we're for it too. Don't just look at them, look at us. And that's where we are. It's political pandering at its worst. We have the two political parties in this country racing to lock up the next minority voting bloc. And this one's a lot bigger than the black vote because, if for nothing else, because of the disproportionate abortion rate among the African American community. They're being out reproduced by the Hispanic immigrant population. And so it's just going to be untenable to hold them up to the same numbers. And this is the reason why Hispanics have overtaken African Americans as the number one minority group in America. So here we are. Conservatives don't want to politically pander. We want to make the case with our intellect, with our ideas. And conservatism appeals to the traditional Hispanic belief system that's already intact. A lot of these Hispanics are Catholic. They're very pro-life. A lot of them very hard workers, have a work ethic. And so we need to be making our case to them through a legal immigration angle, or maybe some expansion of legal immigration to a degree, but not amnesty for 50 million illegals. And I wish people stopped saying that 11 million number.
I know. It's really annoying because I've been seeing that figure for so many years. It's like, how many years can we use that figure? It's not 11 million. It's not even close to that. But, the Daily Caller had a great article about this topic, about the Freedom Caucus and why they may have decided to back Ryan. And I'm quoting, this is from Matt Lewis. He works with the Daily Caller. From his article, it says, politics are messy. He says, and while members of the Freedom Caucus are hardcore conservatives, they do not share the same passion that animated the people who were most actively opposed to Speaker Ryan. He says, additionally, Ryan has assured them he will not seek immigration reform. I know we talked about this just a minute ago. While President Obama is in office, once you get past the amnesty issue, which was a deal breaker for some, Ryan is obviously the most conservative candidate who could realistically get the job. And a supermajority of conservatives in the House, it seems, agree. So I don't know, and I know we've talked about this a little bit already, but what comments? I don't think Daniel Webster could have ever gotten the votes he needed to, very likely to even have been a serious contender. But what do you think, Charles?
Well, Jennifer, listen, I'm so tired of hearing, he's the most conservative that can actually get the job. I'm so tired of hearing that. We heard it from Romney. He's electable. He's the most conservative electable guy we have. I heard it with McCain for president in 08. He's the most electable conservative we can. When are we going to stop accepting this? That a conservative candidate, and I mean a down-the-road conservative candidate, I mean a conservative candidate that is against amnesty, that is a gun toter, that believes in preserving the life of the unborn. I'm talking about a conservative's conservative. A conservative's conservative can win. We must stop psyching ourselves out with this psychobabbler. Is the most electable conservative. Listen, we have to get out there and make the case. They said Reagan was unelectable. They said it for 2 whole presidential election cycles before 1980, that Reagan was unelectable. And guess what happened? The 2 biggest landslides that we have had in our party's recent history. What has this shown us? What can we learn from this? Let's stop buying into the notion that the most electable conservative out there, and let's just pick our guy or gal.
I agree with you. I mean, every time we compromise principles, we lose elections. Because the thing is, conservative ideas, they win elections. And it's going to be very interesting to see how this election, the one we've got just right on top of us now, it's going to be very interesting to see how this plays out. Because isn't it interesting that the people who are basically winning thus far, leading the pack, are folks that are not politicians, number one, but they're people that are really subscribing to ideas of conservatism. And they're way out front. And, you're seeing Jeb Bush, he's cutting staff and cutting funding and all this kind of stuff. And so how many years is it going to take us before we realize that compromising principles, like I said, it loses elections. And with that, we do need to run to our next break. I am Jennifer Meadows on Philadelphia's 1360 AM. I am here with TJ O'Hara and Charles Albert Johnson III. We will be back after this message.
Hey, we've all had computer problems. The question is, what then? You gonna take that little darling down to one of them big box stores and turn it over to some kid whose voice changed last week? He's got more stainless hardware in his face than a Smith & Wesson pistol? Hell no. That's like taking a lame horse in for a pedicure. Let's be honest. You've shared things with your computer you wouldn't have with your best friend. Now that's a special bond. And you need someone who understands that relationship, can bring her back good as new. You need Jaffrey Computer. I know that old boy who runs that place, and he's as good as gold and smarter than your 7th grade science teacher. Jaffrey Computers at jaffreycomputer.com. Trust no one else.
Hi, I'm Joe Perry.
And Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, here for RAD, recording artists, actors, and athletes against drunk driving. Yeah, you know we love it when the music does the talking.
And you know, the music stops when someone gets killed.
So never let someone you know get behind the wheel if they've been drinking. So keep it real. Friends don't let friends drive drunk.
A public service message brought to you by the U.S. Department of Transportation, RAD, the National Association of Broadcasters, and the Ad Council.
You and your family are connected by routine, and you stick to it. But what if a disaster strikes without warning? What if your day's routine is disrupted and you can't reach your family? Have you planned for that? Before a disaster turns your family's world upside down, be ready. Get a kit. Make a plan. Be informed. Learn how at www.ready.gov. Brought to you by the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Ad Council.
Live from Mississippi, here's Graceland with Jennifer Meadows.
Well, this is Graceland on WNJC 1360, part of the Conservative Commandos Radio Network. I'm Jennifer Meadows with media personality Charles Albert Johnson III and TJ O'Hara, political analyst for the Independent Voter Network. We've been talking about possible Speaker Paul Ryan, and it's a good thing, a bad thing, basically kind of tossing around some ideas about this. But why do we trust someone, and I'm talking about Paul Ryan, who has not proven that he's really trustworthy? The Conservative Union has given him an F, which is probably pretty difficult to earn. And I know we've talked about this just in this discussion about how he said that he would not actually bring up amnesty while Barack Obama is still president. But, it would seem to me Daniel Webster would be a better candidate. But but I think he's just not rhino enough. So, Charles, I don't know. I mean, what do you think about this?
Well, I'm not 100% discouraged at the Paul Ryan speakership nomination. Maybe he'll turn out to be malleable. Maybe he'll turn out to be one who can listen to the conservative wing and incorporate some of those ideas. The bottom line is we just don't know yet. I don't want to prejudge his potential speakership, but I do want to say that I am disappointed in the sense that I believe that there are other qualified conservatives. And stop with this electable garbage. As I said earlier, we've got to get into picking our guy and our gal and let them go. I think case in point, look at the quote unquote electable conservative presidential candidates. Jeb Bush, first of all, how's he doing in the polls?
Yeah, he's doing well.
How's Marco Rubio doing in the polls? How are these electable conservatives doing in the polls in the primaries, where we see that the front runners have been Dr. Ben Carson and Donald Trump. So, I mean, I think that there's hope that we can shake loose from that traditional, or what has become the traditional mentality of the establishment of the Republican Party. I think we can get to a place where we can chart our own destiny. I think the Paul Ryan pick goes against that. I'd rather see some new blood in there. Paul Ryan has really, as you said, not really even been proven. I don't think he's a proven conservative, to say the least, and he underwhelmed as a vice presidential candidate. But we'll see how it goes.
Well, and he and Romney as well, and I think America, by and large, is rejecting the establishment, and I think they're looking for more principled candidates and very likely people with more conservative ideas, and I think not to steal Donald Trump's campaign slogan, but they want to see America great again. And so that's why they're looking for people like Donald Trump and Ben Carson and candidates like that. Now, we're getting close to the end of the show, and I wanted to move into our next topic and something a little more lighthearted. And I guess I could say lighthearted, but something, I guess it depends on how you look at it. But there was a headline I saw a couple of days ago that basically said, "Women cry foul over Glamour magazine naming Bruce Jenner as Woman of the Year." And it says the politically correct magazine, Glamour magazine, has reportedly waived the one defining requirement of candidates for its Woman of the Year honor. It says a double X chromosome in confirming the title for 2015. On cross-dresser Bruce Jenner, a move many women are finding completely insulting. So, I don't know, guys. What kind of place are we now? It's completely crazy. And here we have Reese Witherspoon, who's also looking at getting the award. It was Bruce Jenner, and she both were nominated for Woman of the Year. And I don't know if I were her, I'd be thinking about that. But TJ, I know he's a big fan of the Kardashians. I don't know if you aren't you? You're a big. I mean, just don't miss an episode. Yeah, don't miss an episode here. So tell us, are you surprised that Glamour magazine's Woman of the Year is not actually a woman, I guess?
Well, first of all, I want to clarify. I only watch the Kardashians for my intellectual stimulation. So
okay, yeah. It's a
and I'm thinking about what Charles was talking about before when he brought up the term rhino. And I'm wondering if Caitlyn Jenner is going to start a new trend called wino. Woman in
nice, wino.
Not so sure that that's not going to be the direction. What I found fascinating about this whole discussion, a lot of people are too young to remember Germaine Greer, but she was like a huge feminist back at the beginning of the feminist movement, and she's now calling Glamour misogynistic. Because they're giving awards to Caitlyn Jenner, and there was their highest paid female CEO in New York Magazine just featured another transgender individual. So it's like the women's awards are now going to people who have been surgically altered, and it's interesting how this has gone full circle. So it's I think it'll be almost as entertaining as the Kardashians.
Yes, I agree with TJ. I mean, I don't know, so I'm going to ask the same question to you, Charles. So, are you surprised that Glamour Magazine's Woman of the Year is actually not a woman? I mean, it's nuts, Charles. How do we get to this place?
Yeah. Well, look, I'm just hilarious. I'm just covered with hilarity over here. It's because liberal women getting upset that the politically correct bullet has come back to shoot them in their own rear. Bruce Jenner's courageous as Catelyn Jenner. He's brave. He's all that in a bag of chips. But then he gets an award for being a woman. And now all of a sudden wait a minute, doesn't he have a penis? How can he get an award for being a woman? Or has it been altered yet? This is a thing where we're to the place where surgically altered women can cash in. And it even makes liberals get in a tizzy, liberal women, because feminism is all about being a woman. It's akin to the lady that tried to be black. She was the NAACP chapter president. Her name escapes me, Rachel some or another. Mm-hmm. And we're at a place in this society where you can be white and say you're black. You can be a man and say you're a woman. I mean, what's next?
Charles, I got to jump in and tell you.
There's nowhere else you can go except extraterrestrial. So I can now say I
don't know where we go from here. Where do we go from here?
I'm Kal-El from the planet Krypton.
Hey, Charles, wouldn't you go along with this though? You've got to give Glamour some credit for picking Caitlyn Jenner as Woman of the Year. I mean, that takes balls.
Nice. Even if you've had yours clipped, it takes balls.
Oh my God, y'all!
Even for the
Are we still on the air?
Help control the pet population. Okay, that was mean. I'm sorry. I want to get us kicked off the radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on our last night.
Well, there's no way we can top that. With that, I think we are just about out of time. But we do appreciate you tuning in. And please tell our listeners, TJ, where they can find you online.
Real quickly, just tjohara.com is my website. TJ O'Hara2012 is my Twitter handle. And on Facebook, it's O'Hara2012.
And Charles, you also.
You can find me on Facebook like Straight Talk with Charles Johnson. You can find me on Facebook, Charles Albert Johnson III. You can find me on Twitter, Sons, SONZ, Sons of Liberty 76. Get at me.
There you go. And you can find me on Twitter. That's JM Graceland. Also look for me on Facebook. That's Jennifer Meadows in Memphis, Tennessee. You can also look for the show being featured weekly on HottyToddy.com. And I know Charles is really excited about that.
Well, I bleed maroon and white, but hey, it's for the show. So Hotty Toddy.
There you go, Hotty Toddy. But thanks again, Philadelphia, for listening. Take care. God bless. And until next time, good night, folks.